Welcome back to Library Dress YouTube channel. In today's class, we are going to learn how to make this beautiful cape dress that we see here. You can see that it has an asymmetric neckline that you can see, and it also has this beautiful cape on the neckline. It has a princess dark seam line, and it's a really beautiful dress, as you can see. If this is something you like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so this body has an asymmetric neckline. That's why I have my pattern folded into two. You can actually cut this directly on your fabric, but for the sake of clarity, that's why I'm using a paper so that we can see what I'm doing very well. We're going to work with a princess dart style line. Okay, so you can work with a bustier princess dart or a regular one. So I'm going to be showing us two different methods we can use to get our regular princess dart line with the pattern that I'm going to be using for the front and the back, so that we can just learn something new. So now I have my basic bodice here. My half length is about 17.5 inches. This is my armhole, my bust point, my under bust as my half length. If you're not using a regular bustier princess that you don't actually need your under bust, but just in case we want to do that, that's why I left it there. So now the first thing you will need, like for your normal dart line, is your center line, which is the bust span measurements. For me, that's 9 inches divided by 4 by 2 is 4.5. So here now I'm marking 4.5 inches from this fold point. I'll do the same thing on the bust line as well, and then I'm going to make that center line into a straight line. Okay, so this is my bust span line. So on both sides now you're going to take your regular dart. So like I said, if this were to be a bustier pattern, we'll take like 1 inch on the under bust line, we'll take another dart on the waistline, and then we'll connect that. But in this case we are just using a regular waist dart. So what I'm just doing is to take my regular half an inch on both sides. So if you want a little bit of depth, you can increase it to 0.75, like I am doing here, and then I'm going to connect that to my bust point. But now I don't want to connect exactly on my bust point. I'll just come down by 1 inch from my bust point, and then I'm going to connect just like this. Okay, so the waistline that now is taken. The next task that we're going to do now is to connect this to our armhole to form our armhole princess dart line. So to do this, I'm going to measure around my armhole, and I have about 11 inches or thereabouts. So I'll just measure 5 inches or 5.5, okay, on the armhole line. And now I'm going to come up by 1 inch again here, and then from there I'll look for a curve, and then I'm going to connect all of this together. Okay, so from here I'm using a curved ruler to connect from here to my armhole. So now I'm connecting this like this. I'm just extending it a bit because I'm still going to take a dart there. So now what you just need to do now is to use your curve to just join everything together, and then you make sure that it blends in very well. You don't want it to be sharp at any point. So just, okay, you can see that smooth transition that you have here. That's what you want to have. And this is the 1 inch below and 1 inch above that we did. So here on the armhole area, I'm going to take a dart of half an inch on both sides of my armhole, and this dart now I'm going to be connecting it to this 1 inch above that we did, and I'm going to use a curved ruler as well. Okay, so again I'm trying to find a really nice curve for this. Okay, and then you make sure that at the end of the day everything still blends well. So on the other side as well, I'm going to connect to the 1 inch as well, and then I'm connecting it and making sure that it's still all blends. You don't want to see any sharp edge. So here we have taken a dart of 1 inch, so I'm going to be extending this center line by the 1 inch, and then I'll redraw my armhole curve. Okay, so you can see how simple it is to create these darts. For the back, I'm going to be using a more simple method so that we can see the options that we have. So now this is our princess dart line. Now we'll just move straight to the neckline. So for the neckline, I said it's an asymmetric neckline, so I just have my regular 3 inches width here. So for the depth of the center, I want it to be 4 inches. So now this is my depth, and then I'm going to connect it. So it's connected now, and this is what we'll have. But remember, this is on fold because of the shape of the neckline. It's not symmetrical, it's not the same on both sides. So I'm going to take my tracing wheel now and then trace out all of this that I have here, okay, so that I'll have them on the other side as well. So when you trace it out, it's going to show so that we can draw it out. And then I'm going to take my circumference measurements. My bust measurement is taken already, so now I'm left with my waist measurement. So the waist is 35, divided by 4 is 8.75. So remember, there's a dart here, so I just exempt the dart and continue my measurements. So I have 8.75 here, and then I'm going to add my seam allowance on this pattern. So now I can connect, and then we'll cut this out. So now what I have on this side, I'll just go ahead and trace it out on the other side as well, so that I'll have exactly the same thing. So now I have transferred whatever I have on the other side to this side, as you can see now, and this is my neckline. So now, like I said, the neckline is asymmetric. So now what I'm going to do first is to determine the width that I'm going to be working with. Of course, I'm not going to be working with this 3 inches by 3 inches. So to do that, I'll measure what I have on my shoulder. I have 5 inches. I'm going to divide that into 2, and that's going to leave me with 2.5. So now that is my new width. You can use different width for both sides, since, like we said, it's asymmetric, but I'm going to be maintaining the 2.5 inches. So now altogether I have about 5.5 inches for my neck width. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, it has like it curves from this side, and then it has like a sharp cut around this area. So to get that sharp cut, I'm going to get like a center line here. So my guide is going to be my bust point. Okay, so from my bust point here, okay, so this is my bust point. So from my bust point here, I'm going to connect to my shoulder, to my new neckline measurements. Okay, to get that line, so I want the line to just be about 3 inches long length. Okay, so now I'll just take my tape so that I won't mark more than the 3 inches, but you make sure that your ruler is on this bust point as well as this your neckline depth. So now once I have 3 inches, which is here, I'm just going to connect just like this. Okay, so that's the depth for this side. Okay, for this side, I'm going to connect it to my center. This crease line should show you your center, and you don't want it to be too choking. That's why I did not use 3 inches, regular 3 inches. That's why I increased it to 4 inches, because I want the person to still be able to breathe very well. So now this 4 inches that I have here, I'll just connect it to the width of this other one using my slightly curved ruler. Okay, you can use your free hand for this as well. What we just want is for all of these points to connect. So you want to connect from here to the neck depth here, and then you find a way to connect it to this sharp point where you have your 3 inches downwards there. So from here now, I'm connecting to my neck depth there, and then from here I'm going to find a way to connect this. And then whatever it is you're doing, make sure that everything just aligns and goes smoothly. So now I'm connecting this as well, and this is the new neckline that I'm going to have. So it's going to run from here like this, and then it goes like this. So this is what my pattern looks like now, I'll just cut the neckline out so that we can see it better. So this is my shoulder slope. This is the 3 inches that we came down for this side, and then this is the shape that my neckline is going to have. So now we'll move straight to the back now. Okay, you can see that it's not a regular neckline shape. So for the back, I already have my patterns drafted as well. This is my zipper allowance. A zipper is going to run through it, and then normally for your back pattern you have your waist dart line, which is what I said I was going to explain to her. So for this particular one, I'm going to work with a princess dart line seam, but I'm not going to be taking any actual darts. Okay, you can also use this for the front as well. So what I'm going to do now is to just maintain my bust span measurements just like we have it here, which is the center line of the 4.5 inches that I used. So I'll just use a black marker so that we can see it well. So this is going to be my princess dart line, and I'll just look for a curve that can just connect this to my armhole. So on your armhole again, you can just measure down 5 inches just like we did for the front, and then I'm going to take a curve, and you can see that I didn't let it get to my armhole line. I went down by around 1.5 inches so that the curve can flow well. So now once you do that, I'm going to place my curve just like this, and then I'm going to connect, like I'm going to blend it in to what I am having. So you make sure that everything blends well and they all align. So here when you're sewing it's going to have a shortage, so to avoid that shortage, I extend this line again as well, and then I'm going to reconnect. So you can see that this is quite simple and doesn't require so much like what we did in front. So this is another way you can create your regular princess dart line without the bustier pattern. So this is my zipper allowance, and that's what I'm shading out. So the next thing is to determine your neck depth and width. Of course, the neck width that you used for the front and back has to be the same, because we are going to sew it. So because we use the same for the two sides of the front, so I can easily do that for this as well. So we increase by 2.5, which is here. So now the depth can be as long as you want. So because the front is a little bit high, I want the back to be a bit low. Okay, so now I'm going to be working with 8 inches, and then I'm going to connect it to form like a V neckline, and this is going to be the neck depth that I'm working with for my back. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut this out as well, and then I'll transfer it to my fabric. So this is the back pattern and this is the front pattern. So for the cape, you can actually draft it using this pattern. I think I've done that severally on the channel by just joining your shoulder seam line like this, and then you determine the shape that you want from your cape. You can just use this to draft it out, but that's going to consume fabric. I don't have too much fabric, so I'm going to be using the freehand method, and it's also equally good as well. So to do that, I'll just need to cut out my bodice, join it together, take my measurements, and then we'll draft the cape. So the patterns are cut out now. This is the front, okay, and I just want us to pay. So like I was saying, the pattern has to be really smooth like this. You don't want it to be sharp at any point. So this is my front, okay, you can see this is what the front looks like. This is the front pattern, and this is the back. So there is no dart in the back, we just have a smooth princess line, and you can see that it is equally blending with each other very well. So I'll cut it out like I said, and after cutting it out, in order not to waste too much time, I'll just go ahead and sew them. So after sewing it, I'll bring it back for us to cut the cape. I have gone ahead to cut it on my fabric. You can see my patterns are cut out now. This is the front, and these are the two sides of the front as well. This is my back. Okay, so this is what I have. So like I said, I'm going to join this together before I cut out my cape, but I also cut out my sleeve. Okay, the 3/4 sleeve is about 18 inches in length, and it's a regular basic sleeve. Okay, the length is around 18 inches. Okay, we can see, including allowance. So now what I'm going to do now is to go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to start to join my pattern pieces together. This is the front. I'll join the princess dot line together, and then I'm going to join it on the shoulder before I take measurements for my cape. So I have gone ahead to join my darts, you can see now. So you can go ahead and iron this open and then weave them if you are not fixing lining to this. I'm not going to be lining this. So this is what the front looks like. You can see that the front has a little bit of cup space, okay, a little bit of depth for the cup because of the way the dart is done. And then you can see the method we use for the back is just on a flat pattern. Okay, so these are our two back. The shoulder is joined as well. So now what I'm doing next now is taking measurements for my collar. Remember, the collar is in two parts. One stops at this angle, okay, at this angle where we broke our front neckline. So the measurement I'm going to be taking now is going to be from this angle now all the way to the neckline area for the front, to the shoulder, and then back to the back. So now you're taking your measurement from here now, and then you take it to your shoulder, and then from there you take it to your center back. So for this I have about 21.5, around 22 inches, including zipper allowance. If you are including your zipper, your cape to your zipper allowance, so if you are not including the zipper, you just deduct 1 inch from that, and you'll be left with around 21 inches for this side. And then for the other side as well, I'm going to be taking the measurements from this corner again. This is shorter, and then I'm on the shoulder area, and then from the shoulder I'll go to the center back as well. So I have about 13 inches. If I deduct my allowance for the zipper, I'll have 12 inches. So that's 12 inches on this side and 21 inches on the other side. You can see that for the other side we just have a little bit of front part attached to it. So we're going to keep this aside now and go ahead to cut our cape. So for the cape, I'm going to bring in my leftover fabric. You can cut it in a straight form, but if you want it to roll well, you can use a bias cut if you have enough fabric. So for that, you just need to put your fabric on bias like this. I want the total length of the cape to be around 5 inches. Okay, so I had half an inch for sewing to the neckline, so that's going to leave it as 5.5, and I'm going to be cutting it on fold. So it means I have to cut 11 inches. So on fold is going to be around 5.5. So while on fold like this, I'll mark 5.5 inches all round. One is going to be 21 inches long. You can add your seam allowance for hemming to that and make it 22, and the other is going to be 12 inches for the short one. So I've gone ahead to cut my capes. I cut mine on fold, on bias. So this is what it looks like. This is for the long part, and this is for the short part. You can see that it is cut on fold, so I will not need to close it up at this point again. So now to turn it, what I'm going to do now is to flip it like this, and then I'm going to sew it close on both sides, and then I'm going to turn it from this upper part where I'm going to sew it to my neckline. So I'll go ahead and do this. You can also add interfacing to it if you want, but I want it to be as natural as possible, so I'm just going to be working with my fabric directly like this. So I'll go ahead and turn my cape and bring it back to show us. So I've gone ahead to turn it. You can see that the two edges are neat now. I just held this open part with a stitch so that it will be easy for me to sew. So this is the long part and that's the short part. So now what I'm going to do next is to bring in my bodice. Okay, I'm going to lay it like this, and then I'm going to match the short part. So you can arrange this first to see what it's looking like. If you need to shape it, well, I don't think you need to shape anything. You can see that it's already taking the form of that inverted V on this side, and then for the other side as well, you're going to place it like this. I hope my camera is capturing it. You're going to place it like this as well, and then you sew around the neckline. So you can see this V shape. Okay, this V shape that we have here, that's what you want to achieve. So if you want it more, before you turn it, you can broaden it as much as you want, but this space that I have, let me remove this so that you can see how pointed it is. Okay, so this shape that I have is fine for me. The space that I have here is fine for me. So if you want yours to be more, before sewing it, you can broaden it more, but I like what I have here so far. So now I'll go ahead and sew it around my neckline. So now for me, I'm not using lining through this like I mentioned, but I'm going to be turning it with facing. So I just got a facing, a smaller version of the bodice. You can see the neckline is the same, everything is the same. It's just a smaller version of what we have here. So I'm turning mine with facing. But if you're not going to be turning yours with facing, you can also use your cape to turn the neckline. So instead of just placing it like this and sew like I am doing, you're just going to flip it like this. You're going to sew to the wrong side of your fabric, so that by the time you flip it over, it's going to turn your neckline neatly for you. So because I have a facing, I'm going to go ahead and sew mine like this. Then after sewing it, I'm going to cover it up with my facing and use it to turn everything over. Okay, so I have gone ahead to sew the cape, you can see, and then I'm turning it with this facing. The facing is quite small, so I'm adding it. I sew a hemming gum together with it so that I can iron it, and I don't want the cape to be poking out. So this is what it looks like now. You can see that the neckline now is neatly finished. So what I'm going to do now is to go ahead and iron this down. Then after ironing it, I'm going to fix my sleeve to the armhole. Remember, we have a armhole here. I'll fix my sleeves to the armhole, and then I'm going to sew my side seam together. So after that, we'll just cut our flare and the dress is done. Okay, so I have gone ahead to fix my sleeve. You can see my sleeve is fixed, and then I've joined the side seam as well. So now the dress is almost done. You just need to take the measurements of this waistline, and then you use that to cut out your flare. So there are several tutorials on how you can cut your flare already on the channel. So I'm using a half circle flare because my fabric is not enough. You can also work with a full circle flare. So I've used my waist measurement. All you just need to do is to divide your waist measurement by 3.142 for a half circle flare and 6.28 for a full circle flare. So that was the radius of my flare, and then the length was whatever it is that will make up a full length for your dress. So now I have my flare here. What I'm going to do now is to go ahead and sew this flare to my half length, and then I'm going to fix my zipper at the back. So I'll do all of this now and bring it back to show us. Okay, so the bodice is sewn to the flare. Now I can see what we have. This is it on the mannequin. You can see the cape that we created. So this is the first side and this is the second side, and you can see that it is neatly finished both in and out. This is our Princess That style line, and this is what the full view of the dress looks like. The length of the dress can be as long as you want, and you can see that it's a simple dress and it's really beautiful. So the cape at the back looks like this. You can see it was a free shape that we created, and this is what it looks like. So you can do any style that you want with your back neckline as well. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment and subscribe to our channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.